Hello and welcome to Daytona International Speedway, a very breezy and cool morning here. I'm Jason Pridmore, and I'm here to give you some info on how you can play to win in MotoAmerica and have a chance to be part of the action with your favorite rider. Now, joining us today to assist us in all this is gaming expert Ben Wilson. Ben, I think to start things off, I think we should give people some information on a little bit of Gaming 101 on how this works.
Absolutely, Jason. I'm so pumped to be with you. We're going to do this all year, so first to 10 races for us should be an absolute blast here, starting things off at Daytona. And if you are a MotoAmerica fan, but you're new to betting, just a quick primer for you. What you'll see on the odds board, we'll talk mostly today just about the single race odds, in which every driver will have a plus money number next to his name. So if you want to bet a particular rider, let's see you say him at plus 200. That's all based off a $100 bet. So if you were to bet $100 on that rider at plus 200, that means you would win $200 for that. We'll also talk about head-to-heads. That's a matchup, a rider versus rider, and a lot of times you will see a minus money number. That means the rider is a favorite. So if you wanted to bet that particular rider, let's say minus 200 is a favorite, you would have to wager $200 in order to win back 100. That's how we'll phrase a lot of this stuff today. And most of these weeks, Jason, we'll talk 3 classifications which are bettable within MotoAmerica. But since we have a bit of a unique race here, Daytona 200, only in the Super Sport class, we are just talking about the 2 classes, which I'm absolutely fascinated and can't wait to get into with you.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and it gives an element to our fans, our hardcore-based fans that might want to put a little something on their favorite rider. And like you said, we're going to be doing this for Superbikes also at all of our other races. But Daytona's a little bit of a special place. As you said, we have 2 categories. We can start today with the Super Sport race that will be the Daytona 200. We'll have a look at this graphic.
Super Sport odds. This is what I'm really excited for, Jason, because I can't help but think about how random this race tends to be. Nobody's ever won it 3 times in a row, but that's what Josh Herrin is trying to do here. You see him, he's plus 176. That, to me, seems like a pretty short number. At the same time, Jason, he's clearly the rightful favorite, but my question is that fair value? Are we getting enough bang for our buck there if we want to go ahead and bet Josh Herrin to win this thing for a 3rd time running?
You know, I think that when you look at Daytona, one of the things about this place with the pit stops, it doesn't just make it about the rider anymore. It also matters how you get in and out of the pits, how your team projects you out of the pits, especially on that out lap and on your fast in lap. So on a normal race, Ben, I would say that number would be really, really good. Here, there's some other guys that I look at that have value. Richie Escalante, obviously, there is one of them, as well as you can go back and even look at somebody like Richard Cooper at almost plus 3,000. The value in Richard Cooper from his first year here last year, I can see him doing pretty well and definitely being in that top 3 as a contender.
Yeah, and for those of you, we talked about the plus money there for, for a plus 200, say, as you see some of those bigger long shot prices like a Richard Cooper, once we start referring to it in the double digits, like, we don't say plus 28.59. That's like 28.29 to 1. So those are big, big payouts, especially in a race that can have the randomness as a Daytona. Could be a lot of value on guys like that. We also have the head-to-heads, and you mentioned Richie Escalante, who has been in the mix here. There is a head-to-head option. You could bet him. He's minus 183 against Brandon Posh. We'll take a look at that graphic here momentarily in the first of our 2 head-to-heads. If you wanted to bet Posh on the other side, you're getting a plus 136 payout. At least for me, though, I'm not too interested, Jason, in laying a big price just in a matchup when there is so much randomness. I really like Escalante as a guy who's nearly 8 to 1 to actually win this race. And you think about where he's been at. I mean, should have been on the podium last year, ran out of gas on the final lap. 2 years ago, had a crash with Josh Herrin. They were at the front of the field, easily could have won the race. So to me, that's the one guy I've really been isolating, at least at the top part of the card this week.
Yeah, I think both these guys are tremendous picks. The thing you have to remember about Brandon is he's coming from Superbike the last 2 years. He's been reunited with his TOBC crew that he's actually won the Daytona 200 with in the past. It's a great story. Brandon Posh is more than capable of winning this race, no question. Again, he's got a good team of people in that pit stop that are going to be able to get Brandon in and out. However, with M4 and the development they've done on that GSX-R 750, looking at Richie, as you say, as an 8 to 1 favorite, he's going to be a guy that I think that a lot of people will look at as a potential race winner for sure.
a third on the odds board there in Richie Escalante. You mentioned, Jason, a couple of the long shots, and we do have one head-to-head that features one of those guys, Richard Cooper, matched up against Peter Hickman in the head-to-head market. Here's a look at the graphic and how they match up. A couple of guys, though, who've had, at least in Richard Cooper's case, great experience here, even though he was a DNF last year, was third after 5 laps, but had a really unfortunate crash on the 26th lap. He's minus 110. Peter Hickman, the slight favorite there, at minus 120. He made his debut last year here at this event, had a bike issue with 3 laps to go and was running 12th at the time. But two guys, this is sort of this race in a nutshell, right? Guys that definitely have the pedigree and have the speed to do it. It's just a matter of can they put it all together.
Yeah, pedigree for sure. Both these guys come from England. They've both been very successful in anything and everything they've ever ridden. They've got a year under their belt. And when you look at these numbers here, obviously it's almost a pick 'em between the two of them. If I had to choose, the only thing that I look at here is the size of the guys. Peter Hickman, who is currently the lap record holder, a mile-an-hour record holder at the Isle of Man, very decorated actual road racer, and he's won British Superbike races in the past. Richard Cooper, decorated with championships in BSB as well. But the size of these two guys, if I had to think about a last lap duel and both these guys were involved in that, you'd have to go with the smaller rider here in Richard Cooper. They are teammates here, Ben, so both of them are going to be on identical triumphs. And I think that when you look at those two guys, Richard Cooper being the smaller guy, that run from the chicane to that start-finish line will probably favor him.
Can't wait to see how that plays out. We'll circle back at the end because I've got a few best bets. I can't wait to get your thoughts on those, Jason, when we wrap up the show. It's not just, though, the Daytona 200 in the Super Sport class that we're excited about. It is also King of the Baggers season, and this race will count in the point standing for King of the Baggers. So not only do we have the single event odds, but these, as we're looking at, these are the futures odds here, Jason. So a fascinating battle at the top this year. Our defending champion, Troy Herfoss, in the overall title, is actually not the favorite here. He's just over 2-1.
Yeah, it's funny because when you look at Kyle and Herfoss, again, this is a coin flip, but now they're going to have a lot of company this year. Baggers has never been more competitive, and you're going to see some new faces as well. You see Cam Peterson's going to be involved, Loris Baz is going to be involved, and of course Bradley Smith, coming from MotoGP, primarily a test rider for the last 4 or 5 years. He has signed on with the factory Harley-Davidson team. These odds here are the ones that I'm interested in and looking at because there are some true potential long shots that have very good pedigrees that you could look at and think one of these guys could win the championship as well. Also, you look at Hayden Gillum there at plus 537, a former champion in this class, riding for Vance and Hines. And Rocco Landers came on so strong at the end of last year, you can earmark him to win some races as well.
A lot of really good options, even in that top 5, as you mentioned, Jason, as far as the actual odds here for this race in particular. And remember last year, Troy Herfoss, who ended up winning the overall title, he was second place to Kyle Wyman, who's our favorite in both of those races. So as we look at the race odds here, these again will differ slightly from the futures odds. There are a couple of riders in here who will not be in the full season classification, but Wyman plus 118, Herfoss plus 148 behind him. But when you talk about a reduced field, and you also talk about a lot of newness, there's some fresh blood into this classification. I automatically, those are light bulbs going off and sirens for me, Jason, thinking, all right, we got to have some long shots. It must be live here.
Yeah, there's no question. The two biggest long shots that you see on this page that intrigue me are, of course, Loris Baz and Cam Peterson, both decorated Superbike riders that have won in our MotoAmerica paddock before. Loris winning the final race of the year last year at Jersey. They're very interesting picks for me when you look at this weekend. When you look at the front two, Kyle Wyman and Troy Herfoss, we have to go back a year, Ben, and think about those races here last year. Troy Herfoss had a very good handle on both of those races. However, he got a little bit out-tricked himself a little bit in the chicane. He's going to take what he learned here from last year, and I don't believe he's going to make those same mistakes again. This year, though, I don't think it's going to be just the 2 or 3 riders that are up in the front that are going to be drafting and playing this cat and mouse game that we see here at Daytona. You're going to have 6, 7, 8 guys, I think, that are all going to be there in that lead draft, and it's really going to be a matter of if you're 5th or 6th coming out of the chicane, with the weight of these bikes and how wide they are, will that person be able to draft their way all the way to the front to be there when they come across the tri-oval finish line?
I think that's why you're seeing a guy like a Wyman slightly favored. He does at least have more of the experience, but as we found out very quickly last year, Troy Herfoss, it didn't matter on the lack of experience front. I mean, he really took this classification by storm. Here is the head-to-head between the two. Wyman minus 133 against Herfoss, who's even money. I would probably just say, Jason, from a general betting perspective, I'm not going to be betting head-to-heads on the top two guys in the race just because, if Wyman is beating Herfoss, you feel like he's much more likely to just win the race. So I'd rather just bet either of these guys win the race, get a little bit better payout than simply a head-to-head, if that makes sense.
Yeah, when you look at this head-to-head, it is a coin flip. But it's hard to imagine that the defending champion with all of the races and a former Superbike champion is Troy Herfoss in Australia. He's at the end of the year last year, he came on so strong, and he wants to win here at Daytona. When you look at the head-to-head here, again, it is a coin flip. Kyle Wyman has won here before. He knows how to do the bankings at Daytona. Herfoss will have learned from that last year as well, and I'm sure he's played those races back over the course of the last year, especially this long offseason, in a way to figure out how he can make it to where he can win one of these races this weekend.
It's going to be so fun simply because you have that battle at the top, but also so many other guys that are new now that feel like they've got a legitimate chance to win. Two of those guys will go to our final head-to-head here, Jason. Check this out as we have a really interesting coin flip battle here. This is a true coin flip. James Rispoli, Rocco Landers, each minus 115 on that head-to-head. And Landers, a guy who twice late in the year, seems to be a rising star in this classification. But you also have James Rispoli, who is a guy who was finished first and second in the two races 2 years ago. So a guy who's really experienced on track, and I'm fascinated to see how this plays out. I looked at this matchup and felt like it was perfectly priced. Like it should be a pick'em for this one. I don't really see an edge here.
Yeah, it's really interesting because when you look at some of the faster tracks, historically what Vance and Hines has done, and you have to remember 2 years ago, Vance and Hines won this Baggers Championship with Hayden Gillum. James Rispoli had ridden for Vance and Hines in the past as well. Rocco Landers, as you said, has won on everything he's been on in our championship. He's won in Junior Cup, he's won in Twins Cup, he's won on Baggers, and he's going to be racing Stock 1000 this year, so we're going to see a lot more winning from Rocco. The interesting part about this is Vance and Hines has always kind of historically played it a little bit safe at some of these racetracks where you have a lot of RPM for a long period of time in order to get that longevity and make sure that their riders finish. It always seems like the factory bikes just have a tick on the Vance and Hines bikes as far as speed goes. I don't know which way I would lean here. I think Rocco's going to be able to stay in the draft. It would just be a matter of would he be able to draft past one of the factory Harley-Davidsons if that, in fact, was James Rispoli. I really like the price matchup between those two guys. Like you said, the value is there, but I don't know who I would choose. Coin flip for sure.
Right. Yep, and just a quick note on that, if you're seeing those win percentages we had on the graphic, like 54%, 54%, that obviously adds up to more than 100%. That's because you do have to pay what's called the VIG. It's a tax that you pay, so that's why you don't just get both riders at even money, even though it's a 50-50 match. Just something to be aware of. Sometimes you do have to lay a little bit extra juice. That is the tax that the sports books make you pay on that. And with that, Jason, I'm fired up. I feel pretty good about my card this week. I'm going to be a little more conservative because it is race one. There's so much newness this year, so I always preach, like, don't be firing your total bankroll away on the first race of the year. But are you ready to see what I got cooked up here, Jason?
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to see what you have. Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's do it. So Daytona 200, I got to go Richie Escalante. The value, it just jumps off the page here at almost 8-1. There's nothing more than I love than a good redemption story, okay? Escalante was, you could tell, just distraught about how last year's race ended. He was right there. Should have been on the podium. His bike ran out of gas. He had to try to will it across the finish line. By the time he could do it, his teammate Tyler Scott passed him, got on the podium. 2 years ago, right in the mix to win the race with Josh Aaron. They crashed down the home stretch. He loses out, doesn't even finish. This, to me, is the perfect situation, the redemption story for Richie Escalante. I have him to start my card at just shy of 8-1. Then I'll also take a little sprinkle on the long shot Richard Cooper, who was in great position here last year. There's kind of a theme as you're sensing on this, Jason.
That's right, 100%.
Guys who've got the pedigree, they've got the speed, they just haven't totally put it all together. I really like the value, too, that Cooper offers. I'll take him in that matchup, minus 110 against Peter Hickman in the head-to-head. Little sprinkle there in the 25-1. I mean, he was of the Brits who came across the pond last year, he was the fastest.
Yes,
and
no
I do
question.
like what he can represent here at Daytona. And as far, King of the Baggers, it's so wide open to me. I don't have a great feel, so I'm just going to take a small sprinkle on a long shot, and that is Loris Baz at about 35-1. I'm fascinated, too, about the motivation for him because, remember, he was going to be back in the Superbike classification, but the Warhorse Ducati team, they reduced their team to just one seat. That's where the defending champion Josh Herrin races for. And Baz had to go out and prove himself in the fall. He won fair and square a seat on a new team, and I'm fascinated, Jason, to see how he does this week. So those are my plays, and for more, you can check out the website here. It is nxtbets.com/playma. That'll give you more info on how to bet all these guys, but I cannot wait for Daytona. Those are my plays, Jason, and I'm fired up for race number 1.
I am too, and I'm looking forward to doing this more with you, Ben, over the course of the year. Of course, we got those 3 classes. We're going to have a good time when we get to Barber, and I think it's going to be very intriguing to see how all this plays out. So thanks so much for joining us on this today and kind of getting us all up to speed on what's going on this year with MotoAmerica Betting Live here.